DW Africa Link.
In this episode of Africa Link podcast, we dig deep into one of the most pressing issues in global development: how mining can be done responsibly. Mining is a critical driver of economic growth, providing essential resources for modern life, from the metals in our smartphones to the infrastructure of our cities. Yet it often comes with significant environmental, social, and economic costs. Tanzania is the focus of our debate. Stay tuned. My name is Josey Mahachi. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter from Africa.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
Known for its vast mineral wealth, including gold, diamonds, and rare earths, Tanzania faces the challenge of balancing the profitability of large-scale mining with the livelihoods of thousands of artisanal miners who depend on small-scale operations. The Tanzanian government has made strides in regulating the industry, ensuring accountability for large corporations while creating opportunities for artisanal miners to operate legally and sustainably. But is this balance sustainable? Can Tanzania ensure mining benefits the economy while safeguarding its environment and empowering its people? To discuss further on this, I'm joined by DW's correspondent in Tanzania, Naomi Jasseda, and Dr. Mussa Daniel Budeba, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Geological Survey of Tanzania. I will start with you, Dr. Budeba. What is the biggest challenge that the mining sector in Tanzania is facing?
Thank you very much for inviting me in this talk. Of course, like other mining industries around the world, Tanzania faces some challenges. One has to do with technology. There is technological issues in terms of, if you look at the mining value chain, from the extraction up right to the end. But the most biggest challenge that exists is into tapping high technology in terms of data acquisition, like doing high resolution, which is a prerequisite of identifying the anomalies of existing minerals. So Tanzania, we at the moment do not have high technology in terms of getting in-country high resolution survey by flying in airborne vehicles in order to capture the data. But of course, the other thing in terms of such technology we are facing is in terms of predictive analytics. Because as you know, there is a high demand of minerals around the world, and the deposits have to be brought into production as quick as possible. But the skills of people to be engaged in terms of processing huge volume of data at low cost in order to generate targets is not that in advance. So this is the area we see as well when it comes to the medium scale mining and the small scale mining to improve their technological efficiency. If that could be in place, then their production efficiency could be a little bit more high. But there is as well commodity price volatility. That means the fluctuation of the price as it affects other countries around the world. Tanzania also is not an exception. When the price goes down and the operating costs still remain the same, this impacts the profitability for the mines. And this we're talking from the small scale going up to the large scale mines. And to some extent, the financing of the mining project, especially at the medium scale and the small scale, is not that much highly accessible to the external funding.
Naomi, you're a reporter on ground. Can you just take us through some of the areas, or which areas of mining is Tanzania exploring? What is it really famous for?
Josey, in Tanzania, I can say we have a lot of areas of mining exploration. And to mention a few, first we have Lindi and Nachingwea region, southern Tanzania. where the graphite mining project is ongoing. And second, we have Kabanga Nickel project in Kagera, north-west Tanzania. And this is one of the largest high-grade nickel deposits globally. And its development is priority for the country. Also, Tanzania is exploring rare earth elements, in particularly areas in Guala in the Songo region. So these elements are critical for advanced technology, including electronics and renewable energy system. And Josey, as well, Tanzania is home to one of the largest helium reserves in the world. It was discovered in a place we call Rupa Basin. So all these are among so many ongoing exploration projects in various mining areas here in Tanzania. And what is it famous for? Josey, as you know, Tanzania is famous for Tanzanite mining, as it is the only place in the world where Tanzanite can be formed.
Wow, interesting. But now from you, Mussa, I just want to know how many plus or minus people are involved in mining in Tanzania?
I cannot tell exactly the number, but the minimum for small-scale miners, we are talking about 3 million people engaging direct and indirect into small-scale operations. But the biggest mines, I could really list some few. For example, Geita Gold Mine, which is one of the largest gold mine in the country, has got a minimum of 5,000 people that are engaged into. But of course, it's more than that when we look at the whole spectrum of the mining sector in the country.
And now we look at these figures that you've just mentioned. Of course, they are not like the exact figures. Then how can Tanzania ensure resources are responsibly utilized and also mostly benefit to the people of the country?
Josey, it's very interesting. Tanzania has got a very good environment for investment. Our legal framework is very predictable and welcoming really to the investors. So responding to your actual question, most people benefit out of the resource that is available in the country, especially which is currently being mined through state participation. The government now, through framework agreement, is just involving into mining operations by having share to the mining companies that are operating, of which the government, as you know, services its people. So people actually benefit out of that. And the other thing is the existing large mining projects do actually, according to our regulation, they are provided services by the local Tanzanians and through the local content and, of course, the corporate social responsibility. And the employability, people are being employed into the mining sector. So you could actually see that most people get benefit out of these the resources that we have.
When you started to respond to this question, you touched on investors, Mussa, but how then does the country work with international partners without losing revenues to big multinationals?
Through the corporate social responsibility, the biggest mines, they are giving back to the community in terms of the projects that they engage in, like construction of schools, these sort of infrastructures, but the local content as well. The companies or the licensees are obliged to prioritize or to provide preferences for the services and the goods that are being produced.
But who monitors? Who monitors? The real question could be probably who monitors, because of course you can come and build a school for like 1,000 euros, right? But you've made maybe triple or maybe 10 times through the minerals. So who monitors?
There is a very good monitoring mechanism through one of the institutions under the Ministry of Minerals, which is Mining Commission, which regulates the sector. They inspect these projects. But of course, the local authorities are engaged into the projects. They sit down and they design specific projects to the needs of a specific community. So there is no such kind of differences that can actually take place.
Now, Naomi, you've been reporting a lot on these stories. Tell us about your experience of reporting on mining communities and what their concerns are.
Josey, here are people, families residing in mining communities are facing significant challenges, and that often overshadow the anticipated benefits. A prominent example is the acacia mining incidents in North Mara, which lead to the death of nearly 65 individuals and injuries to 270 others. So the report said that these casualties were the result of interaction with police assigned to the Gada acacia mining for various reasons. Now, these incidents raise critical questions about whether mining communities genuinely reaping the benefits they deserve. Are these communities safe? What measure in place regarding health and safety guidelines? And what environmental concern arise? So additionally, how does cultural diffusion impact the families of miners who began their lives in these areas?
Mussa, I think you had some of the things that Naomi has just touched on. Would you want to add something on that?
Currently, as I said, the environment is very good. As I said, we have institution under the Ministry of Minerals, which is a mining commission. It's very responsible for regulating the sectors, looking at the safety of people into the mining industry. And at the meantime, trying to monitor the environmental issues, issuing licenses, and these are among of the activities that are being provided. And it's timely being regulated because all over the country, I would say, the mining commission is offices, so of which any incidents that can happen is quickly tapped into press and communicated along the structure. This is what I could actually say. Let's
talk about the past governments, how they've approached mining business. Were there any pros and cons against or others against?
It's subjective opinion, but initially you could see the government was not directly involved into mining projects. It was all about on the law of promoting the investment into the sector. But at the moment, you could see that happened before the 2017 amendment. And now you actually could see the participation of the state into mining projects, which is actually bringing up benefits both between the mining companies and the community at large.
And how can Tanzania balance interests of small-scale miners and large mining projects, like so that there's no much difference, that huge gap?
If I refer back to what I say regarding the predictability of our policy and the legal framework, it's clearly in Tanzania, there are different licenses. There are those that are onto the large scale, that's special mining licenses with a clearly requirements that one has to fulfill, but of course the small scale miners as well. So there is no conflicting interest here because the government has put in a very good framework that ensures the large scale miners meet their interests based on the predefined requirements, and the small scale miners as well onto the required requirements. Look, the country now, we have mapped the 16% high resolution, which is a very beginning stage that provides an indicative of anomalies where one could do the drilling and define resource, which later on, when it is done in terms of optimization, looking at the economic profitability of operating the project, and that goes to the financing issues downstream. So we have come up under the Ministry of Minerals. The Ministry of Minerals developed between last year and this year a mining vision, which is Vision 2030. It is very much centered onto developing an exploration roadmap, which will actually move the 16% to the 50% of our country being mapped by high resolution, which we will be able to know where are the anomalies and which the investors or the in-country mining companies can do the exploration. Of course, it's not just high resolution by itself, but the geochemistry and the geology in integration, it brings up the target, and the drilling takes place, resources being defined and estimated in terms of grades and tons. That is very, 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 very into our hand. So the capacitating of Geological Survey has the government and Her Excellency our president, Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, has really committed a lot of effort to help the Geological Survey as an entry gate into the mining sector, to do these surveys and up to 2050, as I said, to ensure that people are capacitated with the technology in such a way we can have full participation in harnessing the benefits of the resources. And then, of course, doing the planning on how we can extract further. Mm-hmm. So this is now coming to the question, you talked of the small scale and large scale mining. So if we look at this into isolation, what the ministry and under the Vision 2030 is intending to do. In fact, we will be able to identify the deposit sizes, and we will plan accordingly on how these small-scale mines can engage and the large-scale mines will engage. So I don't see any problem in this as long as we are on the track.
What are the ambitions for the Tanzania mining industry right now?
The ambitions is actually seeing the equitable benefits between the mining companies and the government. And in fact, this is we promoting highly to do value addition within the country so that the benefits can remain within the Tanzanian perspective. But also we want to be mineral hub because the geology of Tanzania is very, very, very unique. It consists of the stratigraph of rocks from the beginning of the world up to, of the earth up to now, which supports the various formation of minerals. So we see ourselves that if we invest highly into the technology and doing the survey, our ambition is to see we become the mineral hub. And of course, we want to do more contribution target to our GDP for more than 10%. At the moment, we are running around the 9.1 contribution. So we want to push it. This is an ambition to see more we are doing in that aspect.
Naomi, I know Tanzania is famous internationally for national parks and environmental protection. Are there concerns about mining maybe also contradicting this?
Yes, there are some mining companies in Tanzania that have been accused of causing environmental pollution and operation negligence, which could significantly impact public health, as well as the careless expansion of mining in agriculture areas has intensified food insecurity, created landless pollutions, and sometimes increased poverty and lead to environmental degradation.
Mussa, now let's talk about lessons other countries can learn from Tanzania with everything that you said, the framework, the organizations that are actually monitoring the mining industry. South Africa is having challenges with small-scale miners, Ghana and also Mozambique, just to name but a few.
Yeah, you see, Tanzania has done very well to manage small-scale miners. I could give you a case. We had visitors into our Ministry of Minerals. They were coming from Uganda to learn a lesson how good we have done. And last 2 years, if I may recall, we had the visitors from Zimbabwe. We had some visitors from Zambia and also Burundi. They are coming to learn on what we have done better into the sector. So we have a clear structure of managing small-scale miners in our country through the Mining Commission.
DW's correspondent in Tanzania, Naomi Jasseda and Dr. Mussa Daniel Budeba, Chief Executive Officer of Geological Survey of Tanzania, many thanks for joining us.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
At the Africa Link podcast, we always look across the continent to see how the stories and issues we are dealing with play out or at times even overlap. Mining challenges across Africa illustrate the difficulties in balancing resource wealth with sustainable practices and social stability. In Mozambique's Cabo Delgado region, Islamist insurgencies have exploited grievances over the unequal distribution of benefits from lucrative gas and mineral projects, disrupting local communities despite enhanced security efforts. South Africa's Zama-Zamas, or illegal miners, face violent clashes and perilous conditions in abandoned mines driven by economic desperation. Similarly, Ghana's illegal small-scale miners, known as galamsey, continue to harm the environment despite government crackdowns and attempts to formalize operations. What needs to be done? Ryan Cummings is Director of Analysis at Africa-focused risk management company Signal Risk. All right, so today we want to talk about the mining challenges across Africa, Ryan, just to illustrate the difficulties in balancing the resource wealth with sustainable practices and social stability. Maybe starting with Mozambique, how did the problems in Cabo Delgado begin?
That's a very, very good question. The insurgency itself was very, very murky to find out exactly when we saw the transition between kind of radical preaching in Cabo Delgado province, specifically the northern districts, and where this transitioned to a full-blown insurgency by individuals that were obviously looking to displace local governance structures and replace that with, Islamist jurisprudence or Islamist governance under the guise of Sharia law. We don't quite know when exactly the radical preaching began, I should say, but we definitely know that when gas was discovered off the coast of Cabo Delgado province and a region of Mozambique that used to be neglected by the Frelimo-led government all of a sudden garnered significant attention, and where the state was looking to fast-track infrastructure development and also fast-track improvements in security in the region, that all of a sudden you saw this effort towards, marginalized groups or even, organized criminal entities, just an array of different actors that were based in the region all of a sudden came to the attention of the government of the day, who obviously wanted to provide the most stable environment for multinational corporations that were kind of mandated to launch the LNG sector within Cabo Delgado province. So it was during about 2017, 2018, when we basically saw some of these militants or radical Islamists actually starting to take up arms against the state and engaging state security forces in direct conflict. Now, this is not necessarily indicative of the fact that they were responding, to the discovery of gas off, Cabo Delgado's coastline. It may have been more reflective of the government asserting itself in a part of the country where its actual footprint was very minimal at the time. And all of a sudden, it came to Cabo Delgado province and wanted to set up and create an environment that was conducive to the LNG sector, and we had started to see some of the elements operating in this region as posing a threat to its socioeconomic objectives.
Right. And, we cannot conclude this discussion without talking of other countries, maybe in comparison. South Africa, the Zama-Zamas. There's also the galamsey, that's the Ghana's illegal small-scale miners. Let's talk about also countries like Botswana. It's often talk about the resource curse. But is there really a lot of fuel to this argument behind this, Ryan?
I definitely think it is. There's credible information to suggest that the resource curse, and specifically within an African context, is something of concern. We know that in a lot of African countries that governance structures are not good. They inherited the structures and the systems that were in place during colonialism, or colonial times, I should say. And we do know that the purpose of colonization in Africa, and specifically in countries that were rich in resources, was never to ensure that those resources benefited local populations. They were essentially extracted and exported to ensure that a minority of people, usually obviously the governance structures of the day or the colonizers of the day, would benefit off these resources, while the population would either be used just to exploit the resources themselves or would even be uprooted from their traditional areas of operation, their traditional and vocational activities, whether it be farming, whether it be fishing. And, all of the resources that the state had would then be directed towards extracting these resources, irrespective of the harm that it created or caused to local communities. And not much has changed in the post-independence context, where resources are still being discovered in a lot of African countries. They are being exploited, but the revenues are not trickling down to the local population, who are actually left worse off, by these engagements. Some countries have obviously gotten it right. Botswana has obviously driven quite significant socioeconomic development of the backbone of its diamond industry. South Africa has had some good experience as well in exploiting our natural resources in the guise of gold and platinum, and then using, revenues that are generated from the industry to kind of support our social welfare system. But instances where this exploitation of resources has actually occurred, to the betterment of society or affected communities, is certainly the exception as opposed to the norm in the African context. And in many cases, as I mentioned, communities have been left worse off by mining, by, resource extraction than they would have been if those resources did not exist there to begin with.
Many thanks, Ryan Cummings, Director of Analysis at Africa Focused Risk Management Company, Signal Risk. That's it for this edition of Africa Link. Remember, you are not just a listener, but a part of our community, and your engagement can shape the direction of our discussions. Remember to click follow so you can catch all of the Africa Link podcast episodes. This podcast was co-produced and edited by Crispin Makideo. My name is Josey Mahachi. Thanks for listening. Until next time, it's bye for now.